What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Well, with Thanksgiving upon us, let's discuss the things we were most grateful for from the 2024 D-back season.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, multimedia journalist and graphic designer. So please go check out my website, MillardThomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, please follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks on Instagram as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, with Thanksgiving upon us, let's discuss the things we're most grateful for from the 2024 D-back season. Let's give back, let's give thanks, and talk about this past year in a positive light, despite the D-backs missing out on the postseason. So thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I can do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. And once again, so grateful for everyone who listens to the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. But now let's get into the podcast and let's discuss what we were grateful for from the D-back season this past year, because despite the D-backs missing out on the playoffs and us having to go through that double header on the final day and watch the Mets versus Braves just rip out Arizona fans' hearts out, it was a disappointing end to the season, but there was still so many positives, so many highlights I still want to touch upon from 2024. I think I'm going to start here. Ketel Marte, we are grateful for you to being back to being the best second baseman in baseball. D-backs offense was incredible this year, and it was led by Ketel Marte, who, again, as we always discuss on this podcast, was robbed for the MVP runner-up over Francisco Lindor. We won't get into the argument once again, but all I'm saying is check the second half stats and then get back to me. Marte had a fantastic season in terms of awards. He was showered all MLB first team, third in MVP voting, Silver Slugger, All-Star this past year, a 932 OPS, 36 bombs, just a fantastic season for Ketel Marte. And the fact that this man is on a deal that pays him like around $15 million annually, as we discussed on a podcast like last week or 2 weeks ago, we said Marte is the best value in Major League Baseball. No one gives you his day-to-day consistent production like a Marte, clutch hitting, high leverage situations, hitting in the first inning, hitting in the ninth inning, fastballs, off-speed pitches. Like, it does not matter what kind of pitcher, what kind of pitch, what the situation is. Offensively, Ketel Marte has like no weaknesses in his offensive game, coming off an incredible season and back to reestablishing himself as the best second baseman in baseball. We love Ketel Marte. Next thing I'm super grateful for, the youth movement in Arizona. This past season, we saw so many injuries from the rotation to the bullpen to the lineup. So many guys were in and out, missing time. But one thing that the D-backs had that was able to keep their heads afloat and put them in position to maybe make the postseason was the advent of youth and the depth at so many key positions, because you look up and down this roster and like, right, at one point we lost Gabriel Moreno for multiple weeks and Adrian Del Castillo came in and stepped up. We lost Perdomo for a little bit, and there was like a 2-week stretch where Blaze Alexander helped. Jake McCarthy, still a young guy, stepped up when the outfield was struggling, right? We see some of the guys in the bullpen, their rotation, Gilbert Diaz, Blake Walson, like all those guys at certain points had to step in as depth, fill-in pieces. Ryan Nelson, right? Like the D-backs had so many guys from the minor league system. So many guys who were just on the bench the last couple of years in terms of the youth who were able to step up and be really good fill-ins in terms of organizational depth. And then you also look at some of the everyday starters with the Brandon Pfaadts and the Corbin Carrolls. Like, this is a team that is still pretty young around the edges. Most of their core guys are still in their prime, and this is a team that is still on the rise. Gabriel Moreno still getting better. Corbin Carroll still getting better. Geraldo Perdomo still getting better. And you still got guys on the horizon that could be coming up in the near future. The Jordan Lawlers of the world. Guys who could potentially get even better next season with a breakout, who had a little cup of coffee this year with the Gilbert Diaz's and maybe a Blake Walston. Maybe a guy like Christian Mena, Human Lin make a little bit more of an impact next season with the D-backs. Like, there's so many options in terms of depth, of youth on this D-back squad. And I think we saw it in a big way in 2024 with all the injuries really step up. And I think it was a huge reason why this D-backs team was even competitive this year, is because of the depth of the youth at so many key positions for Arizona this year. So really grateful for how the D-backs were able to do that. Next up, I want to discuss him because he's a free agent and we have to let him know how grateful we are for him. Christian Walker. Christian, if you're listening to the podcast, we are so grateful for you. D-backs Nation, Arizona Nation, we love you, Christian. Please come back to the D-backs. Another fantastic season where it was cut short, only played 130 games because of injuries. And I believe if Christian Walker did not get hurt, he would have had maybe his career year: 26 bombs, 84 ribbies, and an 803 OPS in those 130 games. Of course, we know he's the best defensive first baseman in the sport. What was it, like his third straight Gold Glove, I think, this year? Like, Christian Walker is consistently a stud. And one thing he has done, one thing he has been fantastic in that just really means a lot to Arizona fans, he crushes the LA Dodgers. And we are just so grateful for Christian Walker doing that. He did it in a big way in 2024. And if you look at the numbers against the Dodgers this past season, I mean, it was disgusting. Just his numbers at Dodgers Field in 6 games this year, 25 at-bats. Christian Walker had 7 home runs, 11 ribbies, and an 1877 OPS. We love to see that. And against the Dodgers overall in 9 games, 34 at-bats, 9 home runs, 15 ribbies, a 1765 OPS. We love Christian Walker. We're grateful for you. And please come back to the D-backs next year. And the final thing I want to discuss that kind of parlays all these, things together that we discussed in segment number 1. I'm grateful for the D-backs having the best offense in baseball. I know we missed out on the postseason, but it was not the offense's fault. It was a fun time, game after game, and seeing the D-backs put up these insane scores, these massive stat lines where they would put up 8, 9, 10, 11. Like, how many double-digit scores did they have this past season, right? Like, how many times did the D-backs maybe come back from a big deficit or just blow out another team? Like, this D-backs offense all season long was incredible. It was really fun to watch. And the D-backs are never one of those teams that have the most exciting offense in baseball, because usually it's like maybe they don't have enough power. Maybe they don't have enough guys that can hit for high contact. Maybe they have too many guys that are variants in terms of strikeout. And this past season, the D-backs had the perfect combination of guys that could hit for contact, guys who have good plate discipline, the power, the speed, the chaos. The D-backs had so many different ways that they could kill you with their offenses past season. I was really, really grateful because it made a really fun season to watch in 2024. Now we'll discuss some more things we are grateful for in segment number 2. But hey, if you want to place a little wager down on an upcoming Arizona Cardinals game, then the best place to do that, of course, is going to be FanDuel, because get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. My favorite thing to do on FanDuel is the same game parlay. Give me, sometimes when the Lakers are playing, I like to take a little LeBron 25 points, 80, 30 points, and maybe a little Lakers money line. And when that 3-leg hits, because I am out in LA right now. I'm going to probably the Lakers Thunders game. I'm probably going to be placing that parlay. And if it brings a big smile to my face, I'm going to be ecstatic. And if you want to be ecstatic, just visit FanDuel.com. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more at FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's discuss some more things we are grateful for from the 2024 season. This next phase is kind of going to be about development because there was two guys in this D-backs rotation who I think are starting to develop, get a little bit better. They're maybe not at the level that we want them to be at, but I think we're starting to see the breadcrumbs of these two guys. One guy being a potential frontline starter, and the other guy being at least a back-end starter, and I might not have thought that before. Brandon Pfaadt and Ryan Nelson, I like the trajectory that both of these pitchers are currently on. Brandon Pfaadt, I thought, was pretty good for most of the season last year. He definitely struggled in the second half of the year, hit a little bit of a wall, but I think some of his struggles in the second half was also due to the fact that he had such a large workload for most of the season, and he had to put so much on his plate. Like, I felt like the pressure was really on for Brandon Pfaadt because with the Gallons and the Montes and the Erods and the Kellys all out, injured, hurt, or struggling to pitch, like you really needed Pfaadt. And in the first half of the season, 3.97 ERA in his first 19 starts. I felt good about those first 19 starts, and I felt like in the second half he was only going to get better because that first half of the season he was so important. There was so many games where he gave the D-backs good length and had quality starts, and at one point he looked like one of the better pitchers in Major League Baseball. Started to struggle a little bit as we got toward the All-Star break, but I was really in on Pfaadt having a second half breakout. Did not happen. 5.93 ERA in the second half, but I want to believe next season as he continues to get better. I think he hit a little bit of a wall in the second half of 2024. First full season on the big league, major league level, 180 innings pitched. Like, he was a real workhorse for the D-backs this past season. I just think he hit a little bit of a wall. Sometimes he still gives up that timely home run, which you hate to see. He doesn't give up the quantity he did his first season in Major League Baseball, but sometimes he still gives up. He'll have those 4 really good starts, and all of a sudden, oh, wait, Brandon Pfaadt just gave up a 3-run bomb in the 5th or 6th inning and just kind of blew up his quality start. He still has those sometimes, but outside that, I really like the trajectory of Brandon Pfaadt. Same with the Ryan Nelson, who just no one was really in on Ryan Nelson, I think, after the 23 season he just had where he really struggled, but because of all the injuries and struggles to the D-backs rotation this past year, D-backs once again had to rely on Ryan Nelson, and again, Pfaadt was the best D-backs pitcher in the first half of the season, but Ryan Nelson was the best D-backs pitcher in the second half of the year, and it was not even close. Ryan Nelson, the way he pitched down the stretch, I mean, he was really good. Last 10 starts of the year in the second half, 3.23 ERA, good whip, good strikeout numbers. It was the best version of Ryan Nelson we've ever seen, and now it has me questioning, like, what is the real trajectory of Ryan Nelson? Because before entering this past season, I would just told you, like, if he's not a swingman long reliever for the D-backs, he really has no chance. Like, I didn't think he really had a shot of being a good pitcher after seeing what he did in the last couple of years. But after seeing how he looked in 2024, I now have belief again that maybe Ryan Nelson could be like a number 4, number 5 starter for somebody. At least be maybe a Nick Martinez type pitcher for somebody. Like, I could see that now for Ryan Nelson. I could not see that before. So very happy and grateful for the trajectory of those two young starters. Another developmental guy that I'm super grateful for, Justin Martinez, who after his first season in 2023 with the D-backs, we all knew this guy had incredible stuff, could throw hard, but he just could not command it at all. And I just didn't know if he was going to be like another Luis Frias type, where it's like, yes, your pitches look great, but you give up 100-mile-an-hour home runs and you walk 8 people an inning, and it's like, I don't know if I could trust you because the very, very small sample size Justin Martinez had in 2023, 10 innings pitched, 11 walks, and 14 earned runs. Like, it wasn't good. Yes, he could throw 104 miles per hour, but it's like, can he do anything else outside of that? And this past season, 2024, he showed a lot. Double-digit strikeouts per 9. The walks, the walk rate still a little too high, but the 2.48 ERA, I mean, the split finger, the fastball, Justin Martinez Martinez has showed this past season, like he's truly the closer of the future for the D-backs. He is super young, only 22 years of age, just turned 23 not too long ago, actually. And I think this guy has potential to be with the D-backs organization. I mean, like I said, he's 22. Like 8 to 10 years? Like, can he be the D-backs closer the next decade? Like, I think that's definitely in line. Like, why can't he be our version of Aroldis Chapman or someone that just throws 100 plus miles an hour for the next decade for the D-backs until at least his rookie and arbitration is up? Because if he's really this good for the next 7 years until his contract is up, whenever that is, he might get paid when it comes to free agency. And of course, when it comes to closers, those guys probably shouldn't get paid. So maybe a decade is too overzealous because he might get too expensive if he's this good for that long. But at least for the next half decade, I love Justin Martinez. I love his stuff, and I love seeing what he's going to do in this D-backs uniform. Next up, I'm super grateful for the best DH duo I've ever seen. I've seen people have good DHs before, right? The Red Sox had Big Papi and JD Martinez, and the D-backs have times have plugged in guys who have been productive at DH, but an everyday duo at DH is not something you typically see. You might see one guy who plays every day. You might see a rotation of guys who cycle through the DH and you just use that as like your off day for some of your best players. But the D-backs this past season went to the offseason and said, we're not going to get one guy who could play everyday DH. We're going to get two guys. And those two guys are essentially just going to platoon every single day that we want them to. And it ended up being a home run for Arizona. Maybe the best ROI on any investment Arizona made this past season. You can make that case because Jock Peterson and Randall Grichuk, the combined numbers for those two guys are just absolutely insane. I mean, it's essentially a 900 OPS between those two guys. You get over 30 home runs. You get the 100 ribbies. Exactly like the combination of those two players. It's basically like you had Big Papi playing DH for you this past season, but if Big Papi was both a righty and a lefty, like great from both, like if Big Papi was a switch hitter, that's kind of like the production the D-backs got from DH this season. Maybe like a JD Martinez level production if he was a switch hitter. Like that's how insane the production from Jock and Grichuk was this past year. And both of them being free agents once again after the 1-year signings this past year. Both of them should get paid more than what Arizona gave them, and maybe a longer-term deal, maybe even more playing time. I am going to be upset to see them leave, but I totally understand it. But I do hope the D-backs can at least bring back one of their DHs from this past year. The final thing that I want to discuss from this segment that I was really grateful for, D-backs finally got themselves a stud third baseman once again. I know it was a slow start for Eugenio Suarez in the first half of the year, but legitimately, his second half was so good that by the end of the season, when you look at the final numbers for Eugenio, even if you take into account his first half of the year, he still had arguably the best third base season in the National League. Go look at all MLB, who the finalists were for third base, and tell me who had a definitively better season than Eugenio Suarez. And not all MLB first team. Go look at the Silver Slugger finalists and tell me who had a definitive better season than Eugenio, because Manny Machado won it over Eugenio, and Eugenio had one more home run, hit 5 less ribbies, a higher average, a slightly lesser OPS. Like, they literally had the same season between those two guys, but yet one guy won it and one guy didn't even become a finalist. Like, Manny had a 120 OPS plus, and Eugenio had a 151. Or excuse me, Eugenio did not have a 151 OPS plus. Eugenio had a 116 OPS plus. Like, their numbers were incredibly close to each other, but yet Manny Machado wins a Silver Slugger despite literally putting up like the exact same stat line at Eugenio Suarez. Like, that's the thing that frustrated me the most. I didn't need Eugenio to win the Silver Slugger this past season, but the fact that one guy is winning it with the same stats as Eugenio, and Eugenio is not even considered a finalist, I thought that was kind of crazy, and I was super grateful for what Eugenio did for the D-backs this past season, because he reestablished third base and provided some major pop for what the D-backs didn't have last year in Evan Longoria. So very grateful for Eugenio. Now we got a few more things that we're grateful for from this past season that we'll discuss in segment number 3. But before we get into that, I first want to talk to you guys about Game Time because I'm in LA. I want to go to the Lakers game. And of course, the best place to do that is going to be Game Time because if you need tickets for sports, concerts, comedy theater, and more, Game Time is the place to do it. They have this feature called All In Pricing, which shows you your total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. They even have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time is absolutely the best app out there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast and let's discuss a few more things that we're grateful for from this past season. Next thing I want to discuss is Geraldo Perdomo and him being a game changer because I love Jerry, but I'll admit when he was hurt, when the D-backs were struggling, I did not think life was going to change when Geraldo Perdomo got back. Yes, I thought he was really important to play discipline and this offense of the team, but at the end of the day, I was like, he's the number 9 hitter for Arizona, and the issues for the D-backs just go a lot deeper than that. And I think I was just flat out wrong on that. This D-back season, like, kind of changed after Geraldo Perdomo came back, and I just want to give him a little bit more shine and just put some respect on Perdomo's name because the D-backs were like 31-35 right before he came back. They were like 4 games below 500. And then as soon as Perdomo came back, like that's right around with this D-backs team started to get hot once again. And of course, Perdomo with his flair, with his passion, with his IQ and intelligence, because again, I don't think anyone has better play discipline on this D-backs team than Geraldo Perdomo. I think he sets the tone for the ball strike, for the strike zone. So Perdomo, I just want to give him some respect. Want to tell him how grateful how grateful I am for him because I did not think D-backs life was going to change once he got back from injury this past season, and I was wrong. Life did change. Perdomo was that important. He's one of those sneaky glue guys where you could look at the stats on paper and say, why do people think he's so good? Why do people love Perdomo? Unless you watch him every day as a D-backs fan, you don't know how important he is. He's like an Alex Caruso type, like just one of those glue guys every team needs that when he disappears, so many variables, so many factors of your team starts to crumble that you wouldn't even realize because they're not like a star player or anything like that. So super grateful for Jerry. One other guy I'm super grateful for, Jake the Rake McCarthy, because this D-backs outfield struggled to begin the year, and Jake McCarthy was the person that carried this offense for a while, at least in the outfield, because Carroll, we know, was one of like the 6 worst players offensively the first 80 games of the season. Lourdes Gurriel was somehow like if you guys remember, Lourdes Gurriel was like the MVP of baseball the first like 2.5 weeks of the season. I don't know if you guys remember this, but Lourdes Gurriel started the season incredibly hot. That first game of the year, he had a home run, and he started the season 3 straight home runs, a 5 RBI game, 1 RBI, 2 RBIs, 2 RBIs. So he started the season with 3 straight home runs and then 10 RBIs through his first 4 games. He was cooking those first couple weeks, and then all of a sudden he cratered out of nowhere. Like through the first 9 games for Lourdes Gurriel, he was batting .316 with 1,000 OPS, and then it just started to slowly crater as the season went on. But after those first couple weeks, with also the Corbin Carroll struggling, with Alec Thomas also not doing anything offensively, like the D-backs really needed someone in their offense or someone in the outfield to step up offensively, and it ended up being Jake the Rake McCarthy who was able to do it because rest of this D-backs outfield was so bad for most of this first half. So super grateful for Jake the Rake because he only got playing time against left-handed pitchers as a left-handed bat, just not set up for success at all. And he was able to take advantage. So we all love Jake the Rake. Next thing I'm grateful for, how about D-backs attendance this past year? Because typically we know Arizona, not one of those teams that are going to rake in the numbers when it comes to ticket sales or anything like that. But coming off the World Series in 2023, the D-backs attendance this past year one of the highest they've had in a very long time, and actually the highest attendance average since 2008 for Arizona. And of course, with a higher attendance means higher revenue, which means you could put more money back into the on-field product. So super grateful to go to the ballpark night after night. I'll go to the ballpark on a Monday, a Tuesday, or Wednesday, and it wasn't always against the best team. It wasn't always the Dodgers or the New York Yankees, but you could go to a game against Milwaukee on a Wednesday night and be like, yo, the ballpark tonight kind of has life. It's kind of packed right now. And the last couple years, you would not have said that about Chase Field. You would have said if it was packed, it probably would have been a Dodgers game covered in a sea of blue. It would have been another big rival where they're just coming in with their fan base and just drowning out Arizona fans. But this past season, not the same. Even those big rivalry games, Yankees, Dodgers, a lot of D-backs fans in attendance. So very grateful for D-backs fans showing up for their team a year after the World Series. Then the final thing I want to discuss is the second half power surge from Corbin Carroll, because I think the second half that we saw from Corbin Carroll leads me to believe we could see a big 2025 bounce back from Corbin Carroll next year. I think in the second half of this past season, he really started to tap into the power, cleaned up some of the mechanics in his swing, wasn't as flat, got a little bit more of that launch angle on it, and was also a little bit more picky when it came to the type of pitches he wanted to hit. And it led to a 919 OPS, a 568 slug, and 17 home runs in his last 64 games of the year. So Carroll, despite having a very disappointing follow-up to a Rookie of the Year, I think the second half of the season really salvaged his year. And now I'm very excited for what Corbin Carroll can do in 2025. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.